Welcome back to Series 5.5, Episode 4 of the Public Relations Podcast. And I've got another chat for you this week in this sort of interim series before we launch Series 6 of the show, which is going to have that entirely new format, starting off in late September. I've started to book slots now into October. So if you would like to secure your week on the show, just head to thepublicrelationspodcast.com, click on the guest link in the menu at the top, which has got all the details about the new format and what you'd need if you want to take part in the show as well. I am really excited about that new series. As I said before, I'm basically keeping everything that you've liked in past series and dropping everything else. So we're going to be talking about campaigns that are going on that week. We're going to be looking at world events with some kind of PR spin to them as well. And my guest, or multiple guests, if we have them on at the same time, and myself, we're going to be discussing what sort of things we can pull out of it, what sort of lessons we can get, whatever kind of public relationship building campaign you are doing, what sort of new techniques can be gathered, and also perhaps looking at it as well. You know, if things haven't gone well, what could have been done differently? What might we have done if we'd been given the brief and we would have tackled that thing in a slightly different way? I'm really interested in all those new perspectives. I would love to have you on the show as well. Don't forget also the free newsletter. There's going to be one coming out. Well, there already is one every week, even during Series 5.5, where I'm rounding up all my main thoughts. You can get all the details on the website as well. And it's pretty obvious to click on the newsletter link at the top to get that too. In the last series of the Public Relations Podcast, so Series 5, I spoke to a person called Alexandra Annable, who is the head of PR and brand partnerships for a refugee-focused nonprofit called Techfugees. And what I found really interesting when I was chatting to her was the way that she builds relationships across the board with journalists, with potential partners, with different organizations who can help to get across the message and make things happen. Annable is interesting as well in the fact that she has literally banned press releases from any effort that she's involved in. And yet she builds these amazing relationships with all sorts of people. So how does she do it? In the original episode, I put out a bunch of some of the key points that she was getting across, but I didn't run the whole interview with some more of the insights, some more of the background about what's motivating her, what her job is like on a day-to-day basis, and that sort of thing. So that's what I'm going to run today. Annable starts off talking about, as I say, a lot more about the topic she's involved in. And then she starts talking about how she approaches some of these issues, how she tries to build relationships, and then finishes off with a couple of quick-fire questions about approaching journalists and stuff like that. So really interesting chat. I will round up a few more thoughts on what I think of it just after this chat, but let me fire that off and enjoy this episode.
So basically, I sit on the global board of Techfugees. I'm a non-exec director, and my role there is to do the communications and strategic partnerships. Mike Butcher founded it in 2008.
This is for anyone that's not in the tech world. Mike Butcher is a really kind of iconic person from the TechCrunch.
It is probably
TechCrunch UK.
The main journalist that everyone wants to get in front of if you're a founder or entrepreneur. And it kind of started with him doing a rallying cry to the tech community, and then it became viral. And we're now a global organization, non-profit organization. Our main aim is to basically get equitable access for displaced persons or refugees to education, health and technology. We work with technology companies to create a technology, humanitarian tech, and responsible tech with and for refugees. So we work.
So it's basically using the tech world to help in the refugee space, right?
Because kind of refugees these days need technology, right? So when they go into camps, they need connectivity. So for instance, with Turkey at the moment, we've been working with unconnected.org. So actually what people can do is they can donate mobile data and mobile minutes to phones so that you can reconnect people that are disconnected in the quake zones, and also for Ukraine. We've been working with a company called Freedom ID, who are using responsible data technology to screen people, aid workers, and other people that are working in refugee camps to ensure that they are not human traffickers. And we've worked with a company called Buffalo Grid to develop a piece of tech that can go into refugee camps that doesn't require Wi-Fi or anything like that, but actually provides educational content and connectivity to people in the camps, so kids can still learn whilst they're displaced.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many things that actually, I mean, you think about all the new apps and just the new platforms that are coming out all the time. I mean, even like AI, can you use that? Or have you started using it?
Yeah, so actually AI is going to be, and ChatGPT is actually going to be really good because it gives those displaced people actually more equitable access to technology. And Mike likes to call them digital nomads, because actually there's not a lot of difference between a displaced person and a digital nomad.
Yes. These are people that are just moving around the world, trying to work, trying to run their lives from anywhere, aren't they? Digital nomads. Yeah.
And I think also there is a massive digital skills gap, particularly in the UK. And what people aren't realizing is that refugees and displaced people are a massive untapped community of people that are actually probably the most resourceful entrepreneurial people in the world. The founder of WhatsApp, he was a refugee. And so we're working with companies like Google as well to do training and internships and workshops and placements within their organizations to plug that digital skills gap. The problem we have is that we've had this actual example of a woman who, she was a C-level executive in a Ukrainian company, came here, tried to apply for jobs. The algorithms kind of wheedled her out, so she wasn't getting any of the interviews.
Computer says no.
Computer says no, and she was told, well, why don't you become a cleaner? But she was a director of marketing somewhere, and we have these issues as well in terms of actually the not being given the visas.
Can you give us an idea about your day? Because you said something wonderful when you first started today. You said something about the fact of, well, by the nature of doing this kind of job, I'm always in a crisis, because there are always crises. How do you manage your day then? Can you give us an idea of, okay, there's never going to be a typical day, but can you give us an idea of a kind of an Alexandra day?
Well, I'm consulting these days. So I moved away from corporate to work with people I like, doing what I love doing. So I think I've created my perfect work environment, in the sense that I actually get joy out of what I do. And if it doesn't bring me joy, I don't do it. Absolutely. So I'm very lucky that I'm very passionate about what I do. So I can get a bit carried away on the Techfugees stuff, and I have to be a bit more boundaried around that, because I do some other consulting work as well. But I think it's, like, for instance, a couple of weeks ago in the middle of the night, we got the text about the quake. We set up our emergency network straight away, same as what we did for Ukraine. We created WhatsApp groups. We basically got loads of people together. We had, I had my phone pinging all through the night for about a week, but everyone was just coming together from tech community, And
this was you kind of facilitating these connections between these people.
Yeah. So Mike kind of does that really well. Whenever there's a crisis, he sets up an emergency response network. And then we as a team, we manage those groups and make sure the right people are connected to that, which is why it took a while to get this meeting together, but just making sure we get the right people on the ground connected. We kind of made a list of kind of the humanitarian tech that was needed. Which tech companies do we know? Making sure we get the safe passage there. Then obviously working with the trafficking agencies, because that was a big issue. So we could see big issues, getting people to safe accommodations and passage. So just getting that kind of going and everyone collaborating on that.
And then how do you start to kick in the PR side of that? Because at the beginning, that sounds like this is just about everyone trying to help each other and work out what people can do. But how do you then start getting the messaging out from that? Or do you look for stories in those conversations? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's how we got the human trafficking story, right? So that's how we got the information as well. We know that we kind of started seeing the stats around the disinformation. We were doing a project post Ukraine around that. Obviously, we've already got a lot of key learnings from Ukraine, so we can take those and apply them to Turkey. I think, our key focus isn't necessarily just getting PR out every single day, but now what I'm trying to do is base it around moments. So we've got obviously International Women's Day month, so we're doing stuff around that. The human trafficking element is very pertinent at the moment, so we already have Stop the Traffic doing their campaign so that we can support them. And then we're now building out that story. So actually looking at the tech element of that and how technology can play a role. And we've got a World Refugee Day coming up in June. We're partnering with London Tech Week as well. So we're going to do a lot of stuff. So at the moment, I'm looking at moments. So because the thing is, the problem we have is there's so many things we can talk about. Yeah. I try to distill it into actually, let's look at like 2 or 3 key elements. Who are the partners and what are the stories that we can tell, and then just try and find those stories rather than I could spend my whole day. And we get a lot of people that approach us that want to do partnerships with us, which is really lovely. And we're really grateful for that. But I could spend my day fielding lots of people saying like, we're interested in doing this. And actually I have to be quite focused. And I think that's the biggest challenge, to get focused and get everyone else really focused. And actually what I've been trying to tell people is let's do less and do it better. Because we could go down lots of different rabbit holes and talk about lots of different things and get,
That's interesting, actually, because I can imagine that a lot of firms want to be involved in the space for that sort of to put across a good social conscious message for their own brand. And you've got to look at that and go, well, hang on, are they serious about? I mean, there was that story the other day, I think it was last week, about the whole greenwashing stuff.
Mike's big on greenwashing. So Mike's remit Crunch is he talks about ESG, but he will call out greenwashing. And you'll be surprised that we have been offered money by companies that want to do the greenwashing thing, and we will just say no, because we make sure that anyone that we partner with kind of encompasses our core values and is not just doing it for the greenwashing piece or to have that glow.
Well, it's making sure that you also can put out a strong message too, though, because if you start associating with too many people that aren't actually serious, you're diluting your own message, aren't you?
Yeah. So that's one of our key things. We don't at all, which makes it hard sometimes because obviously we are like a non-profit. So we also
there's money. Yes. Yeah. You need it. Yeah.
We have to
just the reality of the world. Yes.
Well, and I think this is where we talk about the tech for all versus tech for good, because I think there was a lot of talk around tech for good for a while. And it's more about tech for all, and it's about that equitable access.
What have you learned doing this compared to other PR? I mean, what do you think are some of the key lessons that you've drawn out of this from a PR perspective as a whole, but with this particular organization?
I think it's about relationships being key. I think it's more about the storification of things, the humanitarian, like the kind of telling the human story. So everything being really human centric. Like we talked about, like that kind of crisis fatigue. But I think for me, it's also the D&I story, actually. That's a really important thing for me, having been diagnosed as neurodiverse in 2019. And I do a lot of mentoring of women with Brexit Finishing School to get into the creative industries, and still hearing about companies who outwardly talk about their D&I and how brilliant they are at that. And then actually hearing from the girls I mentor that they're still getting where they're getting treated internally. It's not great. So what people say externally doesn't match what they're doing internally. And I think actually this is probably the most inclusive company, the most supportive and collaborative place I've ever worked. And I think actually it's around not being so single-minded in just your own focus and looking at how you can collaborate with other people to tell a broader story and a more richer and engaging story. I think that would be the case. And also just getting to kind of grips with all the different technology and the humanitarian issues.
Yes.
But I think it's that issues piece that I've really kind of learned about. And also not always believing what you see on the news.
Yeah. Let's ask some quick fire questions. These are sort of common issues that people bring up in the show, or listeners have asked about as well. One of the ones is persuading management of the value of PR. Now, often people go, okay, well, I can put out a Google ad and I can see data and statistics that tell me this is working. How do you convince them of the value of PR?
Well, PR is not very tangible, right? But in my previous roles, I've always worked B2B as well. I've kind of worked really closely with sales teams to look at what their objectives are and their agenda and what they need, and actually worked on tailored PR and been able to actually track how PR has actually helped win those clients. I think it is that making the intangible tangible. But I think it depends what kind of CEO you've got as well, whether or not they kind of realize it's around kind of shifting perception piece rather than links. I work with an agency at the moment where I'm consulting. Well, my founder is all about the links, just get lots of links. And I'm kind of like, no, it's not about that. It's actually about the quality of it, who's reading it, and the perception shift. But I think it's hard when you can do something on a Google ad and you get that instant ROI.
Yeah. So how have you measured that? How have you approached that then? Because you were saying that you were working with the sales team. So what did you?
Yeah, so I did that actually. Yeah. So one of the things I did, a company called Social Bakers, we were trying to go after a company called Bimbo, which is the largest bakery in LATAM. I sat with the sales team and really looked at some of the key things that those people that were going to try and call were interested in. And I actually worked on like really targeted stories in those publications that those people would be reading based on issues that they'd be interested in. We placed some really nice quality pieces of coverage, had link backs. Obviously, you have to be like, journalists might not do it. And actually were able to track it and track like the click-throughs. But actually, the sales team then used that coverage to pick up the phone and say, have you seen this in XY publication? Opened up the doors, and actually they got the meeting that way. For Excellent. Me, and it's not a popular thing, but when I was head of comms for a few companies, and I banned press releases. So unless you're like in a company where you need to legally have press releases, like a publicly traded company.
I mean, a lot of people say on this show that they're dead. Press releases are dead. It's now all about the relationships or about that little Twitter message to someone. It's that kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, when I was at Social Bakers, I chose the top 15 journalists globally that were writing about our space, that actually were people that would actually, that our customers would read. And then we only actually did targeted stories with them. Very data-driven targeted stories with them. Because the thing is, I think also when people still talk about Newswire and stuff like that, actually that's just a spray and pray approach. And I don't think it works very well.
No, that's just too much. Final question. If you had a magic wand to change something about the way that PR is done today or could help you in your job, what would it be? One thing.
I think it's just still that relationship piece. And I think we're still coming post-COVID out of that, where people are still not, they're still hiding behind email. So that would be my thing, is just going back to just basic relationship building, going out, just finding out what kind of they're interested in. And I think too many people hide behind emails.
So that was Alexandra Annable, the head of PR and brand partnerships for Techfugees. And as I say, I'm going to put my thoughts on this and some of my key takeaways that I took from chatting to Alexandra in the newsletter for next week. And you can get the newsletter right now. If you go along to the publicrelationspodcast.com and click on the newsletter link at the top, you can sign up for that and you will get the next one that comes out. Also a reminder too about the Public Relations Podcast Project. So this is the project which is designed to support people working in comms and in their comms work, and supporting this show in turn. It's also going to be launching a bit later this year. And if you'd like to have a look at that, head to the publicrelationspodcast.com website as well and click on the link for the project too. And you can join the waiting list for that as well if you would like. In the meantime, I'm pulling out more of the stuff that I didn't run from the chats earlier this year. Some of these other bits of the interviews, which were still really interesting, but just didn't fit into those previous episodes. And I'm going to be running more of those over the next few weeks in this interim series. I have to paint a bit of a bigger picture of some of the guests I've had on the show in the past. Don't forget, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn whenever you like. It is Richard Midson, Midson. I'd love to hear from you and whatever you are up to this week in your public relationship building campaign. Whatever you call your job title, whether you're a PR, a marketer, a comms person, God, there seems so many things this week. Whatever you are up to this week, this month, whatever keeps changing. It's the industry, isn't it? I'm babbling. Enough from me. Have an awesome week. I'll speak to you real soon. Bye.